Welcome to the Fierce and Fit Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, 𝙊𝙥𝙪𝙧𝙀𝙀, a holistic health coach dedicated to helping women over 40 achieve their fittest, fiercest selves. Each week, we'll dive deep into the unique challenges of menopause, including belly fat, weight gain, muscle building, hormonal imbalances, and more. These episodes are recorded live from my free Facebook group, Fierce Women Sculpting Powerful Bodies and Champion Mindsets. Be sure to check the link in the show notes to join our incredible community and access free content, challenges, and resources designed just for you. Hello, how are you? So let's actually dive into today's topic. So today's topic is fascinating. As you know, 𝙊𝙪𝙧 is a bit of a geek. I love research science papers, and I swear probably one day I will go get my master's PhD in this type of area because I just think it's super exciting. Okay, so this is Optimize Your DNA Expression for Menopause, Secrets to Muscle and Fat Loss. So today's live will be very unique. I've never done a live on this perspective, nor would you hear many people talk specifically from this direction. But, I think this is actually really crucial because we're going to dive really down to the nitty-gritty of your subatomic level of your DNA and your genes, okay? So before we dive into the topic though, just for everybody here, this is the Fierce Women community where we sculpt powerful bodies and champion mindsets. So we are going to go down into a little bit of the science behind DNA and DNA gene expression. So you guys know me, my lean is I love to teach and I love you guys to understand the basis of where things happen. And then we'll talk a little bit about the implementation of these gene expressions on how you can optimize that for your health, decreasing inflammation, being able to potentially drop more fat, maybe build more muscle, all the things that we all want to have more optimal health, right? So most of you know that who you are, how you look, how your height, your weight, all this type of stuff, or just like how you're made up comes from your blueprint, right? So each of you are given a blueprint in your mom's womb, carried by your dad and your mom in chromosomes, right? And chromosomes, however they align, will determine whether you are a boy or girl. And obviously also this is a big topic. It's not just XX, it's not XY. You can have XXY. You can XYY, and this is why there's a lot of differences in how people can actually develop, okay? Now, within your chromosomes, the chromosomes carry DNA, right? And you want to think that DNA is the specific instruction manual to how you are going to develop. It's a specific instruction manual of that makes you up, right? So your DNA, let's come back to your DNA, is your instruction manual, okay? Now, how many of you have read a car manual or some sort of manual maybe to, build something in your home? I'm sure all of you guys have read instruction manuals, right? Now, the thing you know about reading instruction manuals is what? You don't necessarily use all the information in there, right? There's a part where you have to maybe assemble the product or how the car is, but instruction manuals are usually huge, correct? So you don't use all the information within an instruction manual. It's there when you need it, but or when you're trying to figure something out, you go back to your instruction manual and look for it, right? So that's the way I want you to think about your DNA, okay? It is a huge instruction manual, but not everything in that instruction manual is actually expressed. So we're going to talk about a process called DNA methylation, okay? DNA methylation is an epigenetic mechanism that cells use to control gene expression, okay? So DNA methylation, what does this actually mean on a biochemical level? So on a biochemical process, okay, your DNA strands have the blueprint encoded in its helix, right? If you look at my picture yesterday, I included the DNA strands. When there is a methylation process, is that like a methyl compound, which is a carbon and 3 hydrogen atoms, will connect to the DNA strand, okay? This process will actually, doesn't change the genetic coding within it, okay? But then it changes what activates in the gene coding. Okay, so what does this mean is that depending on how your methylation processes occur, certain genes that you have will be silenced and certain genes you have will be expressed. Okay, this is why it's called gene expression. Okay, so this is very, very fascinating because this helps you understand that you have a lot of control over what's going to happen in your body, how you develop, how you continue to age. Because if you understand methylation process and what we can do, you can change and radically change your body from here to a year from now, from 7 years, because there's a cellular renewal process within 7 years, right? So this is very interesting. We're going to talk about a few areas in which DNA methylation will actually, what it impacts within your body. Okay, so again, we're still in the kind of like foundation understanding process of the science behind this, and then we'll get to application. Okay, let's talk about a few areas in which DNA methylation affects things in your body. First of all, the first thing that DNA methylation will affect is gene silencing. Okay, so what does this mean is that when the DNA, the methylation happens and attaches to certain areas of your DNA, it can reduce the gene expression. And this is silencing can be good, but it can be bad. Here's an example. If you silence the tumor suppression gene, okay, depending on where it attaches on your DNA, you will be suppressing the gene that produces compounds that kind of gets rid of cancerous cells. And so if you suppress your tumor suppression gene, then the cancerous cells will proliferate in your body. Okay, so gene silencing can have good things, but it can also have very, very problematic things if it ends up silencing some of those things. Now, for everyone listening who is 40 and above, that is 40 and above, that is in menopause or post-menopause or as you age, the big thing behind why your cellular structure starts to change is actually more things potentially get silenced. Another example is if you have, and this is based on your environment and how you're eating, we're going to talk about this, okay? If your environment is producing an effect where the methylation process is attaching to insulin production proteins, and it cannot produce potentially enough of those insulin, and the response receptors, you're going to have problems with your insulin receptors or sensitivity, which would drive, though someone said it above, which would drive potential prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So you want to be careful what you silence and what you don't silence in your body, right? Certainly on a DNA coding level, some of you go say, I have a family history of type 2 diabetes. So there could be a genetic coding within your DNA helix that is more susceptible to type 2 diabetes, potentially, but those genes could be potentially silenced if you change certain things in your environment, right? This is why it's called epigenetics, the genetic coding and what you do to change all of this, okay? So number 2 is cell differentiation and development. So DNA methylation is like a precise manual that basically will, like, as it attaches to the helix, the DNA helix, okay, it is going to change which type of cells your stem cells become. You guys have heard of stem cell research and stem cell procedures where they can actually regenerate a limb. You know this stuff is now crazy in this world. It's amazing, actually. Really, really cool. But your body produces stem cells, okay? Because this is where it gets very interesting, is that your body's stem cells will determine which direction it's going to produce muscle cells, which direction is it going to produce nerve cells, which direction is it going to produce fat cells. So, but the stem cell has to receive instruction, and those instruction comes from how the methylation process occurs. where is it attaching on your DNA helix, okay? So you want, I see a lot of more muscle, less fat, more muscle, less fat. So you want proper cell differentiation and specialization. And you want the stem cells to move towards the development of potentially muscle cells, well, obviously nerve cells. You potentially may not want, or at least less of fat cells. Because let me tell you a very cool fact. You guys ready for this? Once your stem cells produces the protein molecule for muscle cells, or creates the fat cell, or whatever it is, cells or brain cells, it becomes a stable, I think they call it cellular stability, okay? Which means it cannot change after that, the cell, unless it dies, right? That's why you can have cellular renewal processes. But we're talking about the beginning of your cell's production, okay? So the thing is, once it's produced into a muscle cell, into a whatever cell, then the coating on that cell is a muscle cell. So you say, I want more production on muscle cells. Those cells, the DNA coding specifically teaches the cell to do certain things. Here's an example. The DNA coding will actually teach that cell, you need to contract for lifting weights. It will specifically DNA code it to contract so that it can be a muscle cell. If it produces more fat cells, it will have a DNA coding to teach your body to store fat. So this is fabulous because you understand this, how you eat, what you've done in the past, the weight, whatever you're taking into your body, different things we're going to talk about is determining a ton of what is going to happen to your body now and obviously from years from now. Things can change though, of course. You have cellular renewal processes, but that will take time because you might have heard you are the product of all the decisions you've made over the past 5 to 7 years. Yes, after 7 years, there's a potential 7-year renewal process, but how you look today, the belly fat you have, the things that you're going through is the decisions you made up to 7 years ago in regards to your body. Number 3, influence of the DNA methylation process, okay, is environmental influence. So it's connecting to what I'm saying, okay? So methylation patterns is highly influenced by environmental factors, including diet, stress, toxins, and lifestyle choices. These things have a huge impact on the methylation process, okay? Number 4 is, in terms of DNA methylation process, is abnormal methylation patterns are associated with disease. Okay, so I mentioned this before, but hypermethylation, excessive methylation, meaning the methyl compounds are attaching a lot to your DNA helix, is connected a lot. It depends where they connect to, but is connected because there's a big research on cancer research. So let's talk about the application process, okay? As your body ages, 𝙊𝙤𝙪𝙧 mentioned this last time. She says it goes through a process called inflammation and aging. And this process of aging, and what I mentioned is your body will naturally move into a higher state of potential inflammation in your body as you age, because of certain things that are happening in your DNA, right? But what is it that you're doing that can impact this? Okay, so let's go into this. So we're going to talk about the stress and exposure to toxins and inflammatory markers. The first thing is exposure to inflammatory markers. Let's talk a moment about this. Those of you who follow me for a long time know I'm huge. My programs teach this. Every single one of my program touches this. This is the foundation of what we need to tackle. So when you have chronic inflammation in your body, you will have a higher level of inflammatory cytokines, such as interleukin-6 and TNF-alphas. These specific molecules come from a specific region in your DNA that is like basically like hypomethylated. So like they're not producing enough things to fight the inflammation. Okay. And then these cytokines will start to develop. Remember, everything in your body is developed into protein molecules. That is what happens in the cells. But they're just determining which way they go. Will it become a healthy protein in your muscle, or will it become a inflammatory protein like an interleukin-6 or a TNF alpha? So when you have high inflammation in your body will produce more of these inflammatory markers. And this is why blood tests and different tests will test for these things. When you look into people with autoimmune disease, cancer patients, they have high levels of interleukin-6 and other inflammatory markers like TNF alpha and more. It's tremendous, the amount of molecules involved. Did you know, here's another fun fact for all of you, that your belly fat that you hold excretes a high amount of this type of molecules, like interleukin-6, etc., etc. So if you've heard me say, or another pro in health fitness world say, your belly fat is highly inflammatory, this is why, because those cells and that are being produced, the molecules are very high regenerative in the belly fat. And that's why you need to get rid of belly fat. You need to address that sooner than later, because it becomes a vicious cycle. That methylation process and like it's impacting, let's just say, your environment, how you eat, all this stuff is impacting your inflammation, and it's driving up the inflammation markers, but the inflammation markers are furthering the deposit of belly fat, and belly fat then furthers the production of other inflammatory markers, right? So if you want to get rid of belly fat, and you know it's very important to get rid of that, I want you to put belly fat below, okay? This is very important. And the high inflammation markers is often connected to autoimmune diseases like atherosclerosis, anything of the like ISIS, psoriasis, like anything of those types of endings usually is because there's inflammation in your system. This is why so many of my clients who work with me or are in the BioRevive system that have written like testimonials and everything say, my joints feel so much better. Oh my gosh, my body doesn't hurt as much anymore. Yes, you can thank the knowledge, me program, whatever it is, on decreasing inflammation. Okay, so that's one part of it. Now let's talk about toxin exposure. Okay, so toxin exposure includes if you are exposed to heavy metal, obviously like lead and that kind of stuff, pollutants like BPA and plastics, as you guys know this, but pesticides as well, and the foods you eat that if you're not careful what's on it and you're not verifying where the sources come from. This is why Clarice is a stickler for quality of food and a stickler for your supplements. If you buy supplements off the shelf, good luck. You don't know where they're getting all their compounds from, and you may think you are eating something healthy. You may think you are buying something that actually is good for you, and you're ingesting pesticides. You're ingesting toxins that are in the soil. That's why I say you need to be very careful where you take it from. Obviously, all my clients who work with me know that I recommend a brand because it's been verified to be on organic farms. That it is actually like your exposure to toxins is much less. And so this is important because the exposure to toxins, again, causes the methylation process to occur differently on your DNA strands. And you may not know this. Like, you know what? The scariest part is you may be doing this and eating this, and it doesn't become cancer right away. It's actually through years and years of eating poorly or eating the wrong things that is creating this type of methylation differentiation. Okay? So the toxin exposure is, yes, it will potentially silence tumor suppressor genes, but there is also research that has shown that the toxins will create an activation of the oncogenes, which is like oncologists, right? Cancer genes. is that it will actually increase the development of that part of your DNA strand that is producing the kind of like the oncogenes that are related to cancer. So exposure to the toxins creates neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disorders like type 2 diabetes, like high blood pressure, cholesterol, all this type of stuff, and immune system dysregulation, which causes things like lupus, like arthritis, like all of these things that we know so closely to us. So this kind of development comes from a lot of toxin exposure. And number 3 is chronic cortisol stress. Chronic cortisol stress is called cortisol dysregulation, okay? Chronic cortisol is when your cortisol is very high in your system, and that cortisol in your system, I know I speak about this a lot, but on a biological subatomic level, that stress affects the DNA methylation, where those methyl strands attach to your DNA, and it will attach to the areas of your strand that affects stress response, that affects immunity, and affects neuroplasticity. Let me say this again. This is going to be very important. If you have chronic high levels of stress and cortisol dysregulation in your system, you will have the DNA methyl process attaching to your DNA strands in areas relating to stress response, immunity. That's why when you're highly stressed, you're likely to get sick, because it actually will affect the immune response, and neuroplasticity. What does this mean for 35 eyeballs on here? If you are under high levels of chronic stress and you do not deal with it, not only do you affect the inflammation in your system, you will affect your neural development and neural deterioration. Okay? This is why we talk about, in my programs, I always say we work on 3 areas very important. You need to work on nutrition, you need to work on proper strength training, which we're going to talk about in a bit here, like exercise. And the third leg of the stool, what does Clarice always say, is mindset, is how you work with stress. BioRevive ladies who are in my long-term BioRevive, we work on this a lot, controlling stress, because your DNA methyl process will literally attach to parts of your DNA helix and suppress potentially your brain cell production, which is scary when you think about it, but it actually is true as you age, right? Like people, cellular structure stops developing as much and all this type of stuff. So you want to slow down as much of this process as possible through proper methods, okay? So we need to learn how to control inflammation, because if you don't control it, it will lead to chronic diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders like diabetes, and autoimmune conditions. It will affect your mental health condition due to altered stress response and neuroplasticity changes. And it will affect aging and degeneration. So if your inflammation is not controlled, it will accelerate your aging, and your DNA process cannot repair itself. Okay, it becomes poor and poorer at repairing some of these things. Okay, chronic diseases, mental health conditions, aging, and degeneration. So why do I bring this up? Again, if you follow Clarissa for a long time, this is why I speak so much about I'd rather you go on one less trip. I'd rather you buy a little bit less clothes, and you absolutely invest in learning about how to control inflammation. Inflammation will be the determinant of how long you live, whether you control it or not, how fast your brain will decline, and the belly fat and fats in your body, as well as how much muscle you can have, because this part affects all of your DNA expression and the methylation process. Next thing, your nutrition matters. We're going to dive into this now. So the impact of a lot of the things in your food these days is really changing the DNA expressions and creating a lot of those things I talked about, silencing genes, or hyper making too much of the bad genes, expression of the genes. So what do we need to be careful of? We need to be careful of additives, coloring, preservatives, things like, and you might have heard this before, food coloring like yellow 5 and red 40. It increases oxidative stress in your body, and it changes the DNA methylation process in your body. So this situation with these food colorings will actually change the way your cells are responding. And I bring this up because I want you to enjoy Halloween, but in case you are ready to take in a whole bunch of candy, or your little kids are, I just want you to think carefully about this as well. There's a lot of science behind this. I'm not going to get into it, but all those colorings that are in a lot of these candies have shown to really suppress learning ability and the ADHD prevalence in children because of the types of chemicals entering their body. And you think if it affects your DNA expression, what is it affecting in your young kid? Okay? So just remember that. Just putting it out there before you dive into all of these candies and donuts, 𝙊𝙥𝙩𝙞𝙢𝙀𝙧, with a lot of the things on top of them and all of this stuff. What is these artificial colors and things actually doing to your DNA methylation process? Preservatives is the next thing. Now, I am on a lot of my clients for things they're eating. And when they're in my program, they go through food audits, and I actually send them things that I need them to look at, or I need to look at, or depending on what you're doing in my course, the course might teach you this. But a lot of the preservatives are what we call endocrine disruptors, okay? They're endocrine disruptors because they will disrupt that immune process. And then when that endocrine is disrupted, then all your metabolism is changed. What is one example of a preservative Clarice does not like? Nitrates. I mentioned this a long time ago, and there's more. Okay, so if you want to learn more about this, I want you to put programs below or learn more, whatever it is. But example is it's in a lot of things, right? There's other kinds of preservatives that are endocrine disruptors. Okay, so we got to be very careful about this, or else your DNA expressions are all malfunctioning, right? Like the codings are going weird, right? And it's weird because it's not because of necessarily your DNA code itself. So the helix itself is not necessarily the problem. You might be predisposed to it, but it's actually, think of the methyl strands attaching to the side of the DNA. And it's basically like a button press, button release. And it's those things that's what I'm talking about right now. Okay. So you want to learn more? Then yes, put it below in regards to that. And there's other things like emulsifiers and things like that. So there's quite a lot. And this is why I would suggest for you that yes, you can come learn from these free lives, but if you're absolutely serious about cleaning your system from toxins, from inflammatory markers, from understanding when your nutrition, you need to learn it through time, through a program, through something that's going to teach you where it's coming from and what we need to look for. I just give you some ideas in it, but I can't spend like 10 hours right now to teach you the emulsifiers, the flavors, the colorings, blah, 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 all this stuff. It's a lot. But just know that if these things are in your food, they are going to affect your DNA expressions. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about general tips on how to eat. Okay. General tips on how to eat. So tip number 1, not surprising. Try your best to eat whole, unprocessed foods as much as you can. Number 2, try your best to stay within more organic ranges as possible. It is a little bit hard right now because obviously, economy is not good and organic is extremely expensive. So you just have to try your best, but understand why we say this. Number 3, you need to learn to read labels and understand what ingredients mean. And number 4, you need to support the methylation process through learning about proper methyl donors. Okay? So the last one, you need to learn about how to support methylation process through proper methyl donors. So if you're like, well, what are methyl donors? There is a lot of different aspects of nutrition that you need to understand to help you with this. But I'll give you an example. Magnesium is an important methyl donor to the process of the DNA strand. So you need magnesium. I talked about vitamin B before. Vitamin B is extremely important to tons of cellular processes, and you need that from, let's say, a lot of green leafy vegetables, right? These are just a few examples. There's other things too within the food spectrum of like what I teach, or when I give recommendations of like stick with these macros or stick with this type of macros, is part of it is helping with this methyl process, okay? So, but yes, like vitamin B, green leafy vegetables, you know, having your proper magnesium, having your proper supplements. And those of you in BioRevive already suggest certain supplementation for you guys. And then, for example, with a couple of my clients, I was asking them, tell me what you take on supplements. So I try to help you with that. And then on antioxidant-rich foods, as you know, is very important because you need to control oxidation in your body so that the DNA methylation process is more proper, so it could press the right buttons on your DNA versus the wrong buttons. So antioxidants would be like, you might know, like berries and again, green tea, green leafy vegetables, things that really control this. Okay. So if you want to learn more about nutrition, quality and quantity is very important. Timing is important, but you have heard me say this. Timing is actually the third in importance. Number one importance is fixing quality. The number two importance is quantity. Okay. Next thing, we're going to dive into training. Okay. You're like, yes, she's getting to muscles. I want to get to muscles. All right. So we're going to talk about the training for women over 40 on the DNA methylation process. Okay. So number one, no surprise. You need to incorporate strength training to combat muscle loss and improve metabolism, right? We all know this, strength training. But why? Why is this important? Is because strength training actually promotes the expression of genes in that DNA strand for muscle growth, repair, metabolism, and it helps with the production of certain hormones, which if you follow me on Hormone Lives, I talk about this. But when you train, like when you actually go to the gym and you lift weights or lift something heavy, you actually affect the methyl process of where it's attaching on your DNA for it to go, boom, I need to now create a protein molecule here for this muscle cell. Boom, I need to create the hormone to support this muscle building process, right? You want this to happen for yourself. But I'm going to just relate it to what I said before. If your body is under high inflammation and those molecules coming to your DNA strand, like this is how millions of cells in your body, right? You understand DNA coding is like in the nucleus of the cell, like it is like in the millions in like one cell. So if you talk about throughout your body, it's constantly affected by everything you do. If those cells are having the signals for inflammation coming in, you can understand that it's having trouble to produce your muscle cells. It's having trouble to produce your muscle hormones because your signals, it's like a little kid running into a control room, you know, and randomly pressing buttons and it's like the whole system goes haywire. That is how a lot of women right now in your age, menopause, postmenopause, perimenopause, it gets much worse after menopause and postmenopause, is like random signals being pressed all over the place because it cannot actually get the methylation process it needs from the disruptors of the inflammation I talked about above. So that's why you need to first fix that I said above about nutrition. But yes, then the next thing is like, how do we actually build our muscle? That's why you need to go to the gym, strength train to then produce the signals into that DNA strand. Okay. And there's going to be specific protocols you want on like how many times a week you want to train. You know, there's a general recommendation about 2 to 3 times you should strength train at the very least, if not more. And there's certain things on how your movements have to be done in terms of like multi-joint functions, movements versus just abs. I'm just talking to someone who says, I'm doing lots of ab moves. I'm like, okay, that's good, but there's going to have to be more than that, So there you have to work out a certain way. And there is I would say there are different processes of workouts, right? CrossFit, Olympic, bodybuilding, but I would say you really want to learn how to build muscle in sort of like a hypertrophy bodybuilding way, because you want to relate your genes to a muscle mass growth process. You want it to give it the signals for muscle mass, but you can build strength too. It's just that as you age, your suppression of your muscle genes is more. It will suppress your muscle development genes, so you're fighting it, basically. You're fighting the natural genetic coding and development, where it naturally with age, your expressions of some of your muscle building processes will be silenced. But you can change this. So all of you who are listening that are 50, 60, 70, even 80 or 90 years old, okay? You can change this by making sure you get onto a good strength training program. 100% you can change this process in at least delaying all this muscle wasting away. Number 2, I'm going to go through 2, 3, and 4, and this relates to the protocol I use with my women when I design their program, okay? Another part of working out is HIIT, high intensity interval training. It is why I do say that don't overstimulate your cortisol, but you do need some HIIT. Those of you who do my program, the parts that you guys don't like is usually my HIIT portions. Honestly, a lot of you are like, I don't like my, this burpee, I don't like this, right? It's like, okay, but there's a purpose why this is built into your program, okay? So when you do HIIT training, it actually stimulates something even more specific. It stimulates a mitochondrial biogenesis. What does this mean? Mitochondrial biogenesis means that your mitochondria, which is your energy source, your ATP source, gets activated to generate faster and newer mitochondria in your cells. Wow, isn't that cool? Because you need more mitochondria to have more energy in your body and more like youth, and just that people are low energy and all of that because they lose their mitochondrial ability as they age. So you also need parts of HIIT training. And without getting more into that, because I'll talk about these protocols, is why this is built in your program. And some of you have asked me to modify your program, which is okay, and I will modify, but I just want you to understand, some of you who are doing my program, your program is designed very specifically for a purpose, okay? Number 3 is mobility and flexibility work, okay? Mobility and flexibility work is very important because when you do these types of movements, but yes, in terms of mobility and flexibility, when you work on these things, you will influence the gene that expresses itself in connective tissue health. Now, don't we all want that as you age? You definitely don't want to decrease in connective tissues, do you? You want to have good connective tissues. You want good joint mobility. You want all that stuff. So you need to ensure you activate that part of that gene expression, okay? And collagen and different things like that. Again, I'm not going to get into too much of that, but I want you to understand why the way you train matters, okay? Especially as you age. It's not just like, I like it, I don't like it. Part of it, I would say, yes, you should enjoy it. There's reasons to why sometimes things are good for you when you do them, okay? And number 4 is you should have some aerobic cardiovascular aspects to your training as well. This is very important because when you work on aerobic and all of that, again, you activate certain parts of your gene, but it actually activates your recovery genes in your DNA. So you have kind of like a recovery healing process in your body when you when you're like doing cardio, as well as like kind of prioritizing like stretching and recovery afterwards, you will help yourself with the recovery process better. So, okay, so I just want to mention, okay, so there's a lot of aspects to how you need to train, the elements you need in there. So for example, if someone says like in the bodybuilding world, and I can understand for a specific purpose why, there's times when they'll say, oh, don't even really do much cardio, just do strength training. Who has said that before? You are in the bodybuilding world. I know that's been said before. Oh, I come across some male trainers. I was like, why are you doing cardio? Just strength train, because, you just build muscle. It's like, no, I don't think so. So, and even if it was that it's just to build muscle, that's why you focus on building muscle. Your heart is a muscle. You need to work your heart. And that when you do cardio, you create a expression for cellular renewal, like I talked about. You create an expression for inflammation control. So yes, when you do cardio properly, not too much, you create an expression for inflammation control. And then, like I said, rest and recovery. All right, the last thing is this. Epigenetics is a very big field. There's no way I can get it all done in this live, but I'm going to just end with, I believe, 4 or 5 tips, extra tips on how to optimize your gene expression. Okay. Again, if you're learning a lot, let me know or tag someone. Like I said, I want more people to see these lives. And so you help me when you tag me or share my, we can't share it out of the group, but you can tag people. Okay. So number one tip here, the extra tips here, is use nutrition to turn on positive genes. Okay. Use your nutrition to turn on positive genes. So certain nutrients directly impact gene expression, right? I mentioned this earlier. So things like eating leafy greens, making sure you have folate, vitamin Bs, controlling inflammation, all the stuff I had mentioned before is because you can think of it like food is your cheat code to health, right? It's the cheat code to health because you basically, whatever you give it will determine the buttons pressed on your DNA code, right? So you want to have, again, like there's a lot, but like beets is very healthy, potentially fish, depending on fish on the mercury level. So you don't want to have fish high on mercury level. So again, like it's a lot to teach on this live, but it's just, I would say the tip is you need to learn your nutrition and you want to make sure that the foods you eat turns on positive genes for your body. Okay. So another part of this is macros. So I'm going to briefly touch on macros. It's way too complex for me to get into today. But I talk about macros, protein, carbs, and fat, because protein, carbs, and fat feed specifically into different methylation processes on your DNA. Okay? So the better you understand how to do your macros or eat a certain way or have a certain percentage of it, the better your gene expression will potentially be. Okay? Here's an example. Again, these are tips for you to think about, but without a strong structure behind it. Just remember, it's better to learn this within a structure system. But I'll give you a tip. Why menopausal women need to pay attention to fat macros is because certain genes in your body get silenced as you age. And those fat macros actually affects your methylation process of certain hormone productions. So because of that, menopausal women need more hormones to support their body at this point in their life. And this is why knowing how much fat you need to eat is going to impact the health of your body. Because you can think of like a soundboard, and I'm thinking soundboard because I was in Seattle, right? And I went to the sound lab, and their sound booth is massive. Like their control panel, I swear, had like 1,000 switches on it. I was like, it's crazy. The sound room is crazy. But it's like, imagine like as time goes on, those buttons stop working, right? That's you as you are aging. And it maybe stop working because maybe the oil or lubrication on those buttons are not working so well anymore. But the problem is if you don't press those buttons are no longer expressing what you want, like higher metabolism, better insulin response, better muscle build. So you're like, I need these buttons to be pressed, right? Like I need it, So you're like, I need these buttons to be pressed. I want my belly fat gone. I want less fat. I want more muscle. I want to have, I know what most women at this age want. But that's why understanding your macros is important, because it would be like, okay, if you know how to eat your macros, someone's coming in with like oil or the lubrication for the buttons and then like helping it with the buttons and working it and all of that. And then suddenly the buttons are working better now and you can press it, and then you can press the buttons and like, wow, my body's functioning better, right? This is kind of the analogy I want you to think. This is why macros are extremely important. But most important is what I said first. You have to control inflammation, which is quality of food. But that's why the next process is actually understanding macros and macros of protein, carbs, and fat. Okay, so if you want to learn more about macros, I want you to put macros below. And I hope the soundboard, sound switch analogy helps you understand, you can't just be like, oh, I don't know, I eat healthy. Sure, what does eating healthy mean? What does the soundboard need to function for the right buttons to be pressed, right? You need to think about that. When somebody comes in to fix your fridge, comes in to fix your soundboard or whatever it is, they need to do certain things to fix that soundboard. This comes through food. This comes through macros, proper protein, carbs, and fat. But everybody's body is different. That is why the ones who work with me and those who work with me know this. I prefer to look at your body and how it's functioning for a few weeks, right? Mimi's new into my program, and we're at that point. Oh, Shenika, you're on here. Well, Shenika has done some of my previous programs, so I was able. I know she's on par for a lot of things. So her macros came in a lot faster in her program. But it's like I need to see what's happening before we'll determine like how much protein, how much carbs, and how much fat is necessary in your body, right? So yeah, put macros if you want to learn more about macros. All right, next tip for you, okay, is cold exposure. Okay, I know there's a lot going on about cold therapy and all that, and there's actually some truth to this, okay? So when you go into cold therapy or like this ice cold water or cold shower like we talked about before, I mentioned this a long time ago, it actually does activate brown fat tissue, which is a good type of fat, which is like a metabolically active tissue in your body. And it activates the genes that is connected to thermogenesis. So what does that mean? When you go through more cold therapy or cold shower, now everybody's like, I have to take a cold shower now because Clarice told me, is because it actually turns on the gene expression for metabolism, thermogenesis, the burning fat, and improving mitochondrial function. So, and obviously like everybody's different. So like, take it with a grain of salt, but there is a lot of science also around why you want maybe a cold shower or, ice baths, cold therapy is a big thing right now, because you want to turn on fat burning genes. So that's another tip. And then third tip here is mindset meditation practices. Okay. So it is very important that you need to work on mindset if you are a very stressful person. I know I just talked to somebody yesterday or the other day who says, I'm a very stressful person. She mentioned it. Why is this important? Because stress connects to inflammation, which I already talked about it. Okay. And you learning to control your mindful practices, your sleep, making sure you're hydrated, your body is calm and whatnot. It will activate certain parts of your gene, but there's more. So I'm going to give you some more here, okay? Without, again, getting into too big of a scientific thing here. There is gene expression, which is what I'm talking about right now, which is the anatomically, under a microscope, they will see a DNA structure and a molecule attached. This is what we've been talking about the whole time, methylation, DNA methylation process. It physically changes the shape of your DNA helix. The second thing I'm going to talk about here, but we're not going to get into this today, is gene activation. Gene expression is one, gene activation is another. Gene activation is, instead of the structural element of your DNA, it is the vibrational energy of your DNA atomic molecules. Nuclear energy plants, we know, the atomic bomb. Why? The strongest energy source comes from subatomic level. So there's your DNA strand and physically what it looks like, but then we didn't talk about the vibration energy of those molecules and what it does. And without getting too much into it, this is what quantum physics is actually about, okay? Is the vibrational energy of those atomic molecules and how they attach into your DNA strand affects your vibrational energy and affects a lot of the expressions of what, like, you know, you might have said, oh, I feel this person is a high vibration energy person, which I get that a lot. I'm a very high vibration person, and you can feel things. We have intuitions. We feel things when they're not quite right. Why is this important? Because mindset is more important than you believe. And I know I've worked with a lot of my clients in regards to mindset and very specifically trauma. So someone has said PTSD above. If you've gone through extreme amounts of trauma in your life, in your past, you know, first of all, I know it's very hard, and I know I coach quite a bit of women who've gone through that. Sometimes your lack of progress in your body is because on a subatomic level, these vibrational energies have not been changed yet. This is why I encourage a lot of my women to talk to me or tell me if there's something wrong. Mindset work, go through exercises. My muscle accelerator clients, we have a lot of mindset classes because they find that helps them so much. Obviously, depending on the level of trauma, I always say it's always healthy to see a specialist, like a psychologist, like a therapist. And I know one of the gals I coach, we talked a lot about this because she has gone through a lot of trauma, but she's fixed quite a bit of her nutrition. She's fixed quite a bit of her workouts and things like that. But the one thing is she needs to continue to work on this. Okay. I know this is a little unconventional what I'm speaking about, but it is actually very true because you need to think about this. When you look under a microscope, what is happening to those molecules? They're vibrating, correct? That vibrational energy is how are they put together? It's not just how the methyl processes attach structurally, but it's what is those vibrations happening, okay? Again, I'm not going to go into crazy amount in here about this because this is 15, 20 hours worth of stuff. But what I will say is if you are somebody who has gone through a lot of trauma, you have trouble with your mindset, you don't control your mindset very well, you're a very high stress person, I would suggest that you get help with that or work in a program where somebody like myself or somebody else will work with you on this, because you can fix everything but not work on mindset and you still will not make the type of progress that you want in your body, because I'm a holistic health coach. It's not just about nutrition, it's also what's happening inside your body vibrationally, correct? So one thing I'm going to say here is studies have shown that when there is structure in someone's life, like structure programs, structure systems, it creates safety for people, okay? And so they have found that people who have gone through a lot of traumatic things or mindset is a really difficult thing, they absolutely operate the best in structured environments, in things that give them structure, systems, and accountability, because it creates a safe vibrational frequency for their body, for the DNA molecules to operate better and more, healthy, I guess, in a healthy way. So number 4 is exercise timing and type for optimal gene activation. Okay, exercise timing and type for optimal gene activation. So depending on different things, sometimes on certain times of the day, it's shown that it's slightly more effective potentially with fat burning, kind of like they found in studies. Now, I know everyone's different. I am honestly a night owl and people know this, but they have found that in studies that if you work out more in the morning, you kind of tap into the gene coding that does more like energy metabolism, like just like more fat burning processes involved. And they found that people who like to work out a little bit later in this research is that they will have more strength gains, because later in the timing of the day, they actually the DNA strands activate more of the strength training portion versus just like morning energy and cardio type stuff. But without getting into too much in that, what I will say is exercise timing and type. I'm just going to come back to the menopausal training protocol. I think that, yes, there's timing, but I think there is like what you do within your workout that is very important. So I already spoke about this, so make sure you're paying attention to that, okay? Menopausal training protocol, like I said. And number 5 is you want to ensure that you get enough natural light exposure. Natural light exposure will help you regulate your circadian rhythm genes. Now, again, remember your DNA on a molecular level is energy and vibration. On a molecular level, it is vibrating. Vibration comes from energy sources, correct? That's why when you work out, train, and do things, you become more energetic, yes? Your sunlight, your sunshine is a huge energy source, and you need to make sure that you get that into your cellular structure so that it can activate the light therapy, the lights that actually activate the proper methylation process in your DNA. So making sure you get some, at least 15 to 30 minutes of sun a day, okay? So this is very, very important to just, there's a lot of things you can think about, but I want you to think of it from the standpoint that what does your DNA need at a molecular level to be the healthiest you? And you think about the goals. Everyone said the goals for me at the beginning. If you didn't tell me your goals, put it below. Because somebody said, like, I want to lose fat. I want to build muscle. Somebody else said, I want to, like, control my diabetes and stuff like that. So I want you to think about those goals. And I want you to think, like, how can I, through my nutrition, through my workouts, and through my lifestyle factors like mindset, rest, and recovery, optimize all those DNA expressions that I want, okay? So when I went through those tips with you already, but I'll just end with this. In order for this to work properly, you need to make sure that you have sequence and proper structure in how you apply your knowledge. Why do I say that? Is that when you don't apply your knowledge in sequence and in a structured way, it would be the same as a little kid running into the switch room, right? The big switch room I talked about. I'm like, I learned about intermittent fasting, which it does have positivity things on there. I'll maybe talk about it in 1 second, but, and you like do intermittent fasting for 2 weeks. So you push these buttons on your switchboard and then, yay, I learned I should go strength train and I'm going to strength train for 1 month, So you run into the switchboard and press these other buttons that are now affecting this. But then you're not consistent. And then you go, oh, and then I learned about keto. And then I learned about this. Oh, I saw this exercise move, so I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do this. What is that going to do to the switchboard? You guys tell me. What is that going to do to your switchboard? I know you guys know the answer. That is going to create lots of DNA disruption, confusion, don't know what to do. So your DNA is just all confused, So we need to create, I can even say DNA clarity. And DNA clarity comes from consistency in structure and systems, knowing how to properly apply proper nutrition principles, how to properly apply workout principles, and how to properly control your mindset and your lifestyle factors, like whether you're sleeping, you're drinking water, all of that. Okay? Yeah, everything gets confused, overloaded, circuit explosion. I love all this haywire, right? So you guys understand. That's why some of you have bodies that are like haywired. You're like, what's wrong with my body? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm gaining weight. I'm plateaued. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting arthritis. I'm getting I hear from a lot of women that's like, my body's just breaking down. I don't understand. I'm 50, I'm 60, and everything's just changing. So I just want you to understand, no, yes, everyone will age, but what you do, which is the whole science behind epigenetics, what you do will radically change how you age. So if you want to age better, make sure you learn from someone who has these elements in place, who understands this. And I'm going to just end with this. We are currently uptaking for our last FFF program for this year. So that is a small group coaching program, and it has a very structured process in place to help you learn how to apply a lot of these things I spoke about today in a very structured program. If you want to learn about that, please put FFF below. It will be the last one of the year. And of course, if you haven't heard about it by now, our free challenge is starting on Sunday. So if you want to just get a taste of it, you can try it. But remember, a free challenge is not long enough, but it can give you a chance to kind of go, oh, okay, what is some of the nutrition Clarice is recommending? Or what is the some of the things, even lifestyle, because I know in my free challenge, I talk about lifestyle factors in there and why I'm recommending it. So at least you can get a taste of it. So put free challenge if you want to join that free challenge. You have like 2 days left to register and then we close it. But if you really want to have a structured system to apply and not have mixed signals and all of those things where everything is flying left, right, and center and everything, then put FFF below. Okay? I hope this added value. You can tell I'm very passionate about this because I do believe you can change your life by understanding this. There's your chronological age, which is the age you currently are in years, but there is your biological age. And you absolutely 100% can change your biological age by doing these things that I spoke about today in understanding DNA optimization and optimizing DNA methylation processes. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful. If you loved it, let me know. Tag people, let other people know about this live, and I will see you next week. I'm doing next week's live as well.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fierce and Fit Mentor podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the follow button on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, or wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If something in this episode resonated with you, please leave a review or share it with a friend who'd love it too. Your support means the world and helps us reach more amazing women like you. Until next time, stay fierce, stay fit, and let's keep building your most powerful self.